Okay, hello. My name
Hello.
is Shane Brodie. I am in Kansas, I think.
You're in Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah, I'm right next to the border. When I was using Google Maps, all of a sudden it said, "Hey, welcome to Kansas," and I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm kind of straddling the border here." Yeah, so I'm here, and I've been running around the country, running around the continent, frankly, talking to trans, intersex, non-binary, gender non-conforming people and parents and allies, and it's been really great. I took a little break, went up to Alaska for a little bit, and I'm back down here, kind of doing a Western part now, which is cool. And I have a guest today, and she's going to introduce herself.
Well, thank you. My name is Samantha Ruggles. My pronouns are she, they, any, and
What was the third one there?
she, they, any. Any pronoun.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a special one. There's there's some special
like,
ones.
like a neo. I came out in 2014 as a trans woman, but I also don't believe in the binary. So I don't. So I used she, they for a while. And after a while of being misgendered and being clocked, I decided to tag any onto that because that becomes my power. In other words, if somebody misgenders me, they don't know me.
Okay.
You know, so it's almost like an order. She, her, hers, they, them, theirs, and then after that, any. Because
So is that kind of like your order of preference?
yes, it's kind of like more of a preference, and again, the any is more about me taking back my power.
Right. Yeah. Because being misgendered is I don't know about you, but for me it's a little bit painful.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and even a sir, or and I get the occasional ma'am, and I like those, but all in all, I think gendered language needs to take a step back.
Yeah, I was just talking to some people in the South, and they were talking about how honorifics are so much a part of the culture.
Exactly.
Like ma'am, and even saying things like honey, and
Or dear.
yeah, dear, it's so hard to get around that. And and if it's not an appropriate salutation for you, what do you say? Because you know that somebody is being friendly, and it's part of the culture. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's a difficult issue.
And that's kind of why I use any, because usually when somebody does that, they don't know me.
Right.
So I'm not giving them the power. I'm taking my power.
Yeah, and maybe they're just ignorant as well. They're not necessarily being malicious. Yeah.
And I'm on the phone a lot, and I had to deal recently, just yesterday, with my auto insurance. And my auto insurance is under Samantha. And thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate your time, sir.
Oh, yes.
And I just kind of found that very, odd.
Yeah, I get that as well. I mean, because my name is Shane, and I haven't known any women named Shane or feminine people named Shane, but I will get ma'am. And it's kind of interesting. I understand that I have a higher voice, and I don't mind, actually. I could take... some people take vocal lessons so they can get their voice deeper into their chest, but I don't actually want to. I like my voice the way it is.
I like your voice too.
Yeah, why not? I think it's very expressive.
It's yours.
Yeah, it's mine. It's actually comes from my mom, so she has a very whispery voice. I don't mind at all. I actually sing very well, so there you go. Yeah, but I can see, like, if you're on the phone and if somebody can't see you, if you have a deeper voice,
right?
Yeah, misgendering. But yeah, that's still painful though sometimes, or annoying at least.
And now it's more annoying. Like I said, I take it back.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that you also use they. I have also been using that a little bit recently. Yeah.
And part of that, again, is, an order of preference, and it also acknowledges that I don't believe in the binary. I don't believe that there is just two genders. The they part of my pronouns, or the they part of my identity, really expresses my belief in or disbelief in the binary. I don't believe that gender is a binary.
Is this something that you've believed for a long time?
For a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does that come from for you? Like, what inspired you to think that way? Because it's so counter the way our culture is built.
That's a really good question. Gender is something that I've never really felt was... I've always felt like it was on a spectrum. Even in the animal kingdom, growing up, I used to think that all cats were female and all dogs were male. I know that sounds weird, but
Sure.
Fight like cats and dogs.
Well, I think culturally people do ascribe those genders to dogs and cats.
Well, and we also put expectations on young boys to behave like men, to not show emotion, to not, at least growing up in South Central Kansas.
Yeah. To not be a full human.
A very male, patriarchal culture. The man is supposed to be the tough guy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we impose that on children.
We do.
Yeah.
Well,
as they're growing and forming themselves,
And it's sad to say, but my dad was my first bully. I mean, and I love my dad.
Yeah.
My dad's passed, but we became really good friends. But
did he know about your being trans?
No, he did not. I came out after several years after he passed. So, but names like Sissy, being called Sissy, boys don't cry.
Right.
Right. I remember one time after going fishing, and he was teaching me how to clean my catch, and cut into the fish and eggs from the mother,
right.
And I'm like, those are all eggs. Oh my, it's like,
it's a mother.
I started to cry a little bit, and he was like, you're a sissy, and I'm like,
Could have been like a teaching moment, like explaining the science of that or something instead of punishment.
Exactly. Shame.
Yeah.
And I think when now that we're talking about being younger, I think that shame is something that society uses, the church certainly uses, to keep people in line, so to speak.
Yeah, it does. I was just talking to somebody in Springfield, Missouri, and it seems like the influence of the church is really, really heavy in this part of the country, and that's new for me because up in Alaska and also on the West Coast, the lower 48, it's a bit less so. So it's really interesting being here, and it's so dominant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Kansas City is in the heart of the Bible Belt, but we certainly are part of that. I think maybe towards the end of the Bible Belt.
Yes.
Going down through the South. There is a lot of Catholicism in this area. I was raised Catholic, and not so much the Bible thumping, but Catholics do use Catholic guilt to keep their kids in line.
Famously so. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you still involved in Catholicism?
I am not. I am not. I am spiritual. I have been to church, but it's not about the religion for me. It was more about the event and the camaraderie of the moment.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that too. It's really, I also do that. I go to church more for camaraderie and also music. I love music. So.
Well, and then that's where I was getting ready to go, is early in my activism, which would have been 2016, 2015, I did choral work.
Okay.
Me and a few friends started a transgender-based choir.
Oh, nice.
And
so really celebrating your voices.
A celebrator of voices, exactly.
That's wonderful.
And it was, certainly, but we had mix of people, from, baritone to soprano, and sometimes based upon where they were in their HRT or their transition, they might move from alto to baritone.
Right, yeah. And I've also met some male to female transsexuals or transgender women who also get surgery, and then their voice changes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So that was a very good way to express the humanity in being trans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sounds like fun too.
It was. And now I'm involved with an organization called Choral Spectrum.
Okay.
So more of the LGBTQ spectrum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know,
so lesbians and gay men and everybody.
And several of the trans folk from the choir that I helped start is now part of Choral Spectrum. Great. And I've been doing some work with them.
Mm-hmm. Is that mainly where you do activism, or do you do other kinds of activism?
Well, when I came out in 2014, and you know, it's not like when you come out, you wake up one day and, as a man and wake up the next day as a woman.
No, it's a process.
Yeah, transitioning is a process. You just don't wake up one day and be the opposite gender. It takes, you know, months, if not years of counseling, starting HRT. Yeah. But I would say after about being into my transition 6 months, we were having our Pride Festival here in Kansas City.
Okay.
And I went
When does that usually take place?
June.
Okay.
June.
So that's coming up soon.
Yeah. Our Pride this year is, I believe it's the 9th and the 10th.
Okay.
It's the second weekend in June.
By the way, just as an offshoot of that, or a tangent, is there any plans to cancel it, or has there been any talk about that? I mentioned that because just yesterday, I think it was Tampa, Florida, canceled their one of the big, I think it was Tampa, it might have been another big city, canceled their Pride event because of Florida's new executive orders from the governor there, which are very anti-trans. Like it's almost
they are. And I was actually reading an article about Florida today, and you know some of the infighting that's going on between Disney and DeSantis.
Right. That's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
Is there any talk of that here though, in terms of the Pride event that's coming up here?
You know, no, there hasn't.
Okay,
and
good.
I think it's important to note that Kansas City, Missouri, has recently legislated as a sanctuary city.
Oh, great!
In other words, what that means is they are not prioritizing this state law.
Great.
They are basically saying we are ignoring this.
Yeah. Hell yeah. All right, Kansas City. All right.
Go team.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
You know, with COVID and a few other things, we didn't have Pride for almost 2 years.
So I bet people are ready.
So last year was our first Pride, full Pride.
Yeah.
So that was our first full Pride since COVID, and we had a parade.
Yeah.
And I happened to be the Grand Marshal for the
parade.
parade.
Wow.
And
cool.
And I will say I've done a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
There have been many times where I thought I've had my 15 minutes of fame.
Okay.
That was my 15 minutes of fame.
Okay.
That was the most.
I bet that was
joyful experience of my life.
Yeah. A whole community
not
coming
even close.
out.
Not even close.
Yeah, I bet. I was once at a theater where people clapped for me, and I swear I almost passed out because I felt so joyous, you know, that people would acknowledge me in that way. It was pretty cool.
And what was even more moving was, especially during the parade, there were lots of kids.
Oh, okay.
And you know, at first, you know, when I had Born This Way being blasted out of the Jeep, and every time it would start again, you know, there'd be a nice little applause, and I started noticing, you know, the applause was not coming from a place of where you'd think it would come from, and I started looking at the crowd, and I looked down. And it was kids.
Oh, great. That's wonderful.
And I had a sign that said, save the trans kids, protect trans kids.
Yeah.
And, to look at their eyes.
That's great.
Very moving.
So to be a grand marshal, I'm guessing that you're quite an activist then, or that you're well known here.
Well, I am. And I think it was almost more honorary than anything.
Okay.
Not that I've retired from activism, but the bulk of...
your lifetime of work.
My body of work was during Trump.
Okay.
When I believe that my activism, although I was doing work and I had a philosophy that visibility saves lives, and that by being visible, by being engaging with the public, that visibility saves lives.
Yeah.
And that changed for me on November, I believe it was November 10th, the day after the election of 2016.
Okay.
I had started volunteering at the community center here in Kansas City, and I eventually became the executive director for the Kansas City Center for Inclusion. And at that time, we would get 4 to 5 inquiries a month about wanting to volunteer.
Okay. That seems very low.
Yes, I agree. And we were kind of in a place where, as an organization, was kind of at a standstill, so to speak. And they brought me in to try to revitalize the center. Okay. And
by revitalize, what do you mean? Like
be more engaging with the community. Okay. Have more programming.
Okay. What was it like before then? I mean, I don't mean for you to
hard,
point fingers, but
it's hard for me to say because I just started volunteering. Okay. But there
just wasn't a lot of community.
Just not a lot of community going on.
Okay. I must say, I do find that is the case with a lot of LGBT centers, though. There's kind of a disconnect, a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. And
it's a big can of worms.
It's interesting you say that because I'm a little bit jealous of what you do.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
You mean traveling around and talking to people, or
traveling around talking to people?
Okay.
One of my goals at some point in my life is to do something similar like this.
Yeah, you could. Anybody could.
To go cross country.
Yeah.
And have conversation with queer folk outside of my community.
Do it.
Because this Kansas City's community is the only one I know.
Yeah.
But that my activism started the day of Trump's election. Okay. There were people waiting outside the door at the community center. Okay. People needed community.
Yeah.
And at that time, I decided I was going back to school. I was going to school at UMKC in nonprofit management. And I called my professor because I had a big paper due. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember word for word what he said. But he said, you know what, Samantha? This might be your time. Mm. And I got off that phone call and kind of reflected on what he had to say. And I was really upset. I'd been crying all morning. Mm. And something snapped in my head that said, game on.
Yeah.
Time. It's now is the time to go to work. Now is the time when the work is needed.
How would you describe your, I guess, general political philosophy? Are you, for instance, just to throw out some words here, progressive, liberal, leftist, socialist, centrist? What do you think about those kinds of labels?
Oh, I would say I'm progressive.
Progressive.
Yeah,
okay.
I'd say I'm progressive.
Okay.
I believe that trans rights are human rights.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's not like special. It's not special rights. It's just human rights.
Yeah, and another thing that so back to your question about activism. Yes. I was front of mic with when the military ban happened. I was front of mic when the memo came out, about, rescinding Title IX protection. I was front of line for all of those. Speaker in hand, trans rallies, trans marches. I was doing a lot of speaking engagements. I was everywhere. I was the face of the trans movement in Kansas City for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Now my activism is changing a little bit. One of it is, COVID, had to back off. I am a cancer survivor, so I dealt with some of those issues.
Right, and older Americans are more susceptible, it seems, to COVID.
Yeah, so I have to be a little bit more isolated.
Yes.
Maybe not so much now, but I am still cautious.
Yeah.
But now my activism, and it's interesting, this has come up 3 times in the last week. Where is the activism that is working? Is it about rallies? Is it about protests? And as I've brought this question up, the thing that keeps coming up is we need to show the humanity in the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
That there is no boogeyman. There is no boogeyman trying to get into the restroom. There is no guys transitioning so that they can win at swimming.
Right.
This is not a fad.
Right.
Nobody gets into a fad to be discriminalized, to lose your job, to get beat up, to be bullied. That's not a fad.
Yeah. Or that suddenly there's so many people doing it when we're actually...
Oh, it's a social contagion. Yeah, I heard that the other day.
We're this tiny little community, It's so weird. It's so weird.
Well, and Kansas City, you talked about, we're less than a half mile from state line. One of the interesting things about Kansas City as a community is it's almost evenly divided.
Yeah.
There's, I think Kansas City Metro is a little over 2 million. There's about 1 million on the Kansas side, about 1 million on the Missouri side.
Yeah.
Demographically very different.
Yeah.
Even on the state line. Wyandotte County, which is where we are now, County Line Road, you talk about state line being close, County Line Road is half a block away.
Okay.
Johnson County, the demographics of Johnson County, white, affluent, and I'm generalizing, but
sure,
the majority.
Yeah.
In Wyandotte, more Spanish, more Latin,
yeah.
More...
I've heard that there's, I've also heard and also seen a larger African-American community here as well, in the general Kansas City area.
And that is going to be more on the Missouri side.
Okay.
More on the, the Missouri side of Kansas City.
Yeah.
You'll often hear Troost is kind of, at one time, was considered kind of the race line.
What is Troost?
Troost.
Is that a street?
It's a street.
Oh, okay.
So, you may have, I said the state line. There was also the race line.
Oh.
And that was at one time considered Troost.
Okay, yeah. And probably there was a red line there as well.
Exactly, red line,
yes.
and I never can say this word right. Help me out.
What is it?
When you move a neighborhood out.
Gentrification.
Yeah. I always want to say gentrification.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's often people from the LGBT community who start the process of gentrification.
Of moving. Well, we're actually seeing that now.
Yeah.
We're actually seeing that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that are leaving Kansas City for places like Michigan. Colorado is not that far away.
Right.
But
Colorado has much better laws, though.
Much better laws.
Yeah.
In Michigan, I recently learned gender identity is protected in the Constitution.
Oh, wonderful.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did not know that either.
So
I know it is in Minnesota as well. Yeah.
And I was looking at some of the New England states. Some of the New England states are much more progressive than I realized. I always thought of the progressive states as being, California, Oregon, Washington. But even, some of the New England states are very progressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they also have their struggles, though. Like New Hampshire, there's it's definitely a Republican majority there, but they tend to be a little bit more libertarian. So live and let live a little bit more. Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah, but a little bit more conservative than the rest of New England. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about the demographics of Kansas City.
It's an interesting area. I like it. It's really beautiful around here. Very lush too.
Yeah. People talk about Kansas.
I know. You
as
think
being flat,
rolling plains and grass or something and cows, and this is not like that at all.
Well, we also have rivers.
Yeah,
so
lots of rivers.
there's a couple of big rivers converge here in Kansas City.
And trains, a lot of trains.
And trains, yeah. There's the history of Kansas City is very much transportation is very much part of Kansas City's history.
Right.
With the
rivers
rivers, with the trains, and the highway system. Yeah. So, where were we?
We were talking about demographics.
Oh, yeah. So, the demographics of Kansas City outside of the metro, and I'm going to use KCMO, and I'm going to use the Human Rights Campaign.
Yeah.
Human Rights Campaign has a municipality index.
Okay.
Where they rate cities based upon their acceptance of LGBT.
Sure.
And they're starting to separate the T out a little bit. Kansas City, Missouri is highly rated.
Great.
There are cities around the metro that are not highly rated. But generally speaking, the Kansas City metro is a blue dot in 2 red states.
Right.
Kansas is red, Missouri red. But Kansas City, in particular KCMO, and the metro in general is more progressive than other parts of the state.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what kind of activism has been going on in the last few years? Sort of like bringing community together or protesting, the various kinds of activism that can be done. Kind of in your era of being an activist, kind of during the Trump era, but also after that, now that we have Biden. What's been going on here locally in Kansas City? On either side.
Well, I would say that prior just to the last, since the midterms, the legislative sessions of both Missouri and Kansas, we've seen, and I don't know how many, I was speaking with the ACLU just yesterday. I want to say something like 128 bills have come out of committee that are anti-trans.
Okay.
Now, they all don't make it to a vote, of course.
Right.
But
they've gone out of their committee, so that's an initial step.
Exactly. They've come out of committee. And, just recently, when the Attorney General of Missouri used his emergency authority to declare a medical emergency.
I heard about that. Yeah. I heard about that down in Springfield. Somebody was talking about that.
And the courts put in an injunction twice, and he recently rescinded it. And the reason why he rescinded it is because the Missouri legislature passed a Save the Kids bill. Okay. Greatly limiting the gender-affirming care for young trans folk, which is scary.
Yeah, that is scary. I have my own ideas about why that's scary. Could you elaborate on that a little bit from your point of view?
With me being a trans elder, I've learned to navigate. I can still live my truth, and I can still navigate this city. Right. Young folk might not have that opportunity. I'm retired.
Yeah.
I don't have to get a job. You know, I have a support group. I have a chosen family. They might not have that yet.
Right. Right.
So just as they are,
and also their parents might not have that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just as they are beginning to blossom, they are being stunted.
Right.
You know,
right.
their growth is being diminished. Their happiness is being diminished. Their well-being is being diminished.
Right.
Their mental health is being diminished.
Right. Yeah, and they're just being denied health care that other kids are able to get, you know, but they just need something a little bit different.
They just need something a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty hardcore that the state is legislating against children, you know, the most vulnerable children out there. Oh my goodness, it's really awful.
And
really awful.
And shouldn't we leave that to the medical professions?
Sure. Yeah, and you know, they're the experts. They've been dealing with this for a long time. And we know that politicians are not the experts in medical care.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, when we have such bigger problems.
Yeah, bigger problems.
We have kids taking guns to school.
Right, or economic issues.
Or economic issues.
The roads, come on.
You know, there are more important issues than trans issues. Let's not make an issue out of something that is your ideology. It has nothing to do with anything other than your belief system. This really is about the GOP, the Republican Party, pandering to the evangelical vote, which is very well funded. There's a lot of money in that demographic. The white evangelical vote is funneling most of these, what I'm going to call hate bills.
Yeah,
and they're being funded by. There's a handful of organizations. It won't take you long to look them up. You know, Americans Defending Families, you know, is one.
It's interesting you brought up the word ideology too, because that's used against trans people a lot, right? If we ever defend ourselves, if we ever do any kind of activism, or if we're just living our lives, here we are, a couple of trans people, it's considered some sort of ideology, whereas it's our identity. It's you know, we're fighting for our lives. Like, frankly, we're fighting for our health care. We're fighting for, you know, public accommodation, being able to change our legal records, which, you know, women who get married, cisgendered women who get married in heterosexual marriages, they change their records all the time. So
and it's so much easier.
So much easier. Just fill out a form. You know, you don't have to go through years of therapy. Anyway, so it's interesting how this word is applied to us, where it's just our identity, you know.
You know, and we talk about these trans bills and how I said a little bit how it doesn't necessarily affect me.
It does.
It really does.
It does, because they'll roll back all the medical care.
It changes the way I want to travel.
Sure.
I would, you know, I'm retired. I want to travel. I want to see places. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Do I want to go outside of a trans sanctuary city?
Right.
To travel somewhere that is not?
Right. Yeah, I was just online yesterday, and I was looking at some people from Canada who, you know, up in Alaska too, we have people like this. They're called snowbirds.
Yes.
So they will spend their summers in the nice weather up in the northern part, but then when winter comes, they come down to the southern states, like, for instance, Florida or Texas, you know. But some of them are now reconsidering that, and not just trans people, excuse me, not just trans people, but also cisgendered people are reconsidering that, because do they want to give their money to these states, you know, through taxation, you know, sales tax, whatever, hotel taxes, you know, and support bigotry that's going on in these states. A lot of people are deciding not to, which I think is great.
You know, I'm thinking about what do I want to do this summer. Well, I mentioned Colorado. Mm-hmm. You know, what a progressive state right now.
Yeah. Oregon, Eastern Oregon is beautiful.
It is.
Absolutely.
And I saw an article about Colorado. Their tourism department is actually using that as a way to attract visitors.
Sure. Get all those gay men out there. They usually have all the money.
That's funny, actually.
It is.
Can we take a little break?
Yeah, absolutely. So we decided to take a little break. These interviews are kind of long, and it's just nice to do that because, I have a dog, etc. So we were kind of mapping out where we want to go with this interview, and I'm always curious when I talk to older trans people who've either transitioned a really long time ago, or they transitioned as an older person. And so I was wondering about basically your story around that. When did you know that you were trans, for instance?
Well, I knew that I wished I had been born a girl from a very young age. Mm-hmm. When I grew up, I had guy friends.
What era was that, by the way?
I would have been, I'm 65 now, so I was born in 58.
Okay.
So my grade school years would have been, 65?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, 65 through early 70s.
Okay.
But G.I. Joe, easy bake ovens, sometimes I'd play with the Barbies, or the Kens, and, I was just a kid. I was having fun.
Right.
And I also
always wanted one of those easy bake ovens.
I'd take one now. What's for breakfast?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The little light bulb cooking everything.
Yeah. Watching it go through. But you got me thinking about food. But just kids playing, being kids.
Yeah.
I and I remember doing role play stuff. I remember, playing grown up where we just different things, and not necessarily gendered. I remember one time I was the queen in a parade.
Okay.
And I don't know how we got there.
And then you became the queen of the parade.
I became the queen of the parade. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's you talk about going full circle.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But somewhere around here I have a picture. I was in a rocking chair, in a chair of some sort, in a wagon with a blanket. But just
like as a kid.
Yeah. But awesome. just kids being kids, and then. And I don't know what grade it was, but I want to say somewhere in that 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school. It's kind of like we started splitting up teams. All the guys go over here and you do your guy thing.
Right.
All the girls go over here and you do your girl things. And I'm like, I want to go both places.
Right.
I love to cook.
I actually had something similar. Like I wanted to be with the girls, like all of us doing our hair, but then I also wanted to play football and be rough and build forts and stuff. So I was kind of split as well.
And I was in choir, and I sang soprano.
Oh, wow.
Up until 9th grade.
Oh.
And that was about the time I remember the bullying beginning.
Oh, okay.
Guys don't sing soprano.
Okay.
What does that make you? Are you gay?
Okay.
Just because I sing soprano?
Right. Well, you'd be one of those voices that probably the choirs would really want, though, because voice choirs are famous throughout the world. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was about the time when I was thinking, I remember at the movie show, and that's what we did in small town Kansas.
Sure.
And there came this time during the movie when it was time to make out. It was time to kiss. I don't know, there was other couples.
You mean you're talking about dating?
Dating,
okay.
Yes, at the movie theater.
Sure.
That was the place where you most first kisses were at the movie theater. And
this sounds very like Americana, you know.
and there was this sense that it was time, I had my arm around her.
Yeah.
And I could sense that it was time to kiss, but I don't know what it was, but I had this thought, it would be so much easier if I was a girl. And just by even having that thought, my brain went into immediate shaming. How dare you think that? Where did that come from? What makes you, it's like, it shut me down. And she picked up on it, and that kind of created some more rumors that I was gay, because not only did I not take the initiative, I put up some kind of wall. But it wasn't a wall like that. It was more of, I was dealing with internalized shame.
Was that also kind of externally dangerous for you?
Actually, I hadn't thought of it, but yeah, it was. Yeah. Again, that was around the time the bullying started. That was also about the time I remember, in communications class, who were your role models? Well, mine would have been Doris Day, Barbara Streisand, and but instead of saying, I didn't dare say Doris Day, I then started thinking, well, my role models should be Rock Hudson. Didn't know he was gay yet, right?
I was going to say that, actually.
John Wayne. Steve McQueen. Started thinking about, and then I started kind of role playing some of those, and learning how to. I had to learn how to fight. I had to learn how to eventually confront my bullies. Welcome back.
This is NPR.
Welcome to NPR. We will bring you the soft rock music from the early 60s, starting with Elvis Costello.
And then later on we'll be playing Enya and whale songs from the 80s.
And Juice WRLD.
I don't even know what that is.
My son's I've never heard it. My son's in the Juice WRLD.
Anyway. So we once again took a little break, and I moved my car, and that's why I'm very wet at the moment. It's been raining, just something fierce out there. This is the most rain I've seen in a long time, actually, which makes sense because it's so green around here. So you were talking about being bullied.
Oh, yeah. And you may have seen this in some other trans folk, when you realize that, and again, I was framing it as, I wish I had been born a girl. I want to do girl things. I want to hang out with girls. To where I had to almost hyper masculine myself to move away from that.
Okay.
To get as far away from that. So, bulked up, lettered in football, out of high school. I think I said I went from, when I was a freshman singing soprano, I was 5'4", 115 pounds. By the time I graduated, I was 5'10", 190 pounds.
Wow.
And then, after high school, college, kind of an awkward time for me, but I really focused on my schoolwork. I had not been that good of a student up until college, but I knew I wanted to get out of small town Kansas. So I buckled down, went to a community college, got good grades, then went on to the University of Kansas in Lawrence, and graduated, and then started role-playing my life. Fast forward, 20 plus years later, married, 2 kids. Now we're getting into, the early 2000s. Google, being able to search, and I don't know where I first saw the word transgender. But when I ran across that term, lights went off.
Versus transsexual, which was
Versus
the older...
transsexual or cross-dressing or transvestite or she-male or porn. I finally found something that was talking about gender as opposed to talking about sex. And around that same time, so not only did, transgender resonate with me, I also learned that sexuality and gender were different and that there were some trans women that considered themselves to be lesbian. And that blew me away.
Right, yeah.
I consider myself pansexual, but I like women.
Yeah. And on my side of things, there were trans men who, after they transitioned, were gay men.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
or bisexual or pansexual.
And my therapist at the time said, you really can't, it's hard for some people to work through their sexuality until they work through their gender. Yeah, so I learned, that there is a difference between sexuality and gender. And that, again, now we're talking 2005, 2006.
Yeah. There was a lot of activism around that, around making sure that there was a distinction between those things. Yeah.
And I was also at a point to where now, my kids are in high school. My marriage was stagnant, is maybe a good way of saying it. And I found myself, and I believe by around 2010, I had done enough, and I'm a research type person. I will read a lot. I will, I found organizations like, Trans Equality Center. So I started learning a lot about what it might be like.
And it sounds like you were looking for some resources too.
Yeah.
Local ones.
Yeah, so, I started looking around at local resources. I found an organization called the Equal Trans Support Group. And learned about their meetings. And
is that peer-to-peer support?
Peer-to-peer support, exactly. Exactly. Peer-to-peer.
So no professional counselor over there?
No professional counseling. Hadn't gotten there yet. Hadn't even come out yet.
I love peer-to-peer support, by the way.
Other than, to say that I didn't come out, I did form a Facebook profile, the one that I have now, expressing my feminine side. So I came out on Facebook.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple of other people who did that as well. It's kind of an interesting thing in this age for people to do, to make a new profile.
Well, and that blew me away because I did not know social media.
Yeah.
I did not grow up with that.
Right. You're older.
My idea of technology was a microwave oven.
Yeah.
Or
a Teflon pan.
Or a
something.
Commodore 64.
Yeah. Tang.
And so social media was new to me.
Yeah.
Texting was kind of new to me. I remember on vacation when my kids would be in the back seat texting each other and laughing. And I'm like, you guys are texting each other? You sit next to each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was some online support group that said maybe you should, or as an idea, express yourself on social media. So I did. I created a female persona on Facebook. It's still my Facebook page today.
What did that feel like?
It felt really good. It felt good. And I made other trans friends. I joined a trans support group, a peer-to-peer support group out of California. And I would say the majority of my peer support was friends that I met in this peer-to-peer support group in California.
Oh, great.
Then I started looking for support groups locally, and was having trouble getting the nerve to even go to a meeting. And I sat outside the parking lot of where the Equal Trans Support Group was meeting.
Sure.
And didn't have the guts to go in. And I sat in my car and I
bet
cried.
It was fascinating, though, to see like people coming in and out and that sort of thing, and maybe camaraderie between people.
Well, and I'm living in West Kansas, Shawnee suburbs, and the support group was in Midtown Kansas City.
Yeah, that's a big leap.
So it's a big leap, and did not go. So that night I kind of hit rock bottom after not being able to go to the support group. And I decided that if I've hit rock bottom, I might as well come out to my wife.